time now for Today in Politics. Now, Sbu, after 2 years of deliberations, arguments and public hearings, the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee that's looking at Section 25 of the Constitution has finally adopted its report, and this happened on Wednesday. What is the next step now, given that the political parties involved still disagree on key components, Sbu, of this particular report?
And that's correct, Bongi. You have the major parties here, the ANC, the DA, and the EFF, on opposing ends of this very debate, even though the committee has finally adopted that very report. And how that was made possible was the fact that the ANC does have the majority of the voting members in that committee of 11 voting members. And of course, this is the contentious Section 25 of the Constitution, which has polarized political parties. Obviously, it deals with the crucial issue of rather expropriation of land without compensation. And now, Bongiwe, the process will move forward to the National Assembly to deliberate on this report. But to talk further about this now, Bongiwe, we're joined by the chairperson of that very ad hoc committee that was tasked with the amendment of Section 25 of the Constitution, Dr. Mathole Motshekga. Dr. Motshekga, thank you very much for your time. 2 years in the making. Finally, on Wednesday, you concluded this report. And someone might say, given all that you've gone through, including the public hearings, and I think there was one in Limpopo where there was even violence, someone might ask the question, if already the Constitution provides for expropriation of land without compensation, why was it necessary to go through this long and costly process?
Our committee proceeded on the premise that our constitutional democracy is both representative and a parliamentary participatory system. All political parties were given an opportunity to make submissions on the amendment of Section 25, to make explicit what is implicit in the Constitution regarding the expropriation of land without compensation. But the original bill, which was published for public comments, was a compromise bill which limited the scope of our work. When we held public hearings, the people went beyond the scope provided by the compromise bill. This required a further extension of the lifespan of the committee to allow us to call for further written submissions. Parliament, we are indebted to Parliament leadership because they gave us a 3 weeks extension from July to 13th August. Some of the submissions called for the removal of the June 1913 cutoff date for the allotment of land claims. In terms of rules of Parliament, that would have required a longer extension of the lifespan of the committee. But Parliament was only prepared to give us 2 weeks to enable us to complete our work. Now, our deadline was the 10th September 2021. I'm pleased to say that we then took the submissions by the people, and those submissions were very critical because they helped us to bridge the differences between political parties. And that's why...
But would you say you have bridged those differences given the fact that you have a DA and a Freedom Front Plus that are still opposed to the main recommendation of that very report, and also an EFF that is also on the opposing end, which is unhappy with the final report?
No, you see, the ad hoc committee works on the basis of the majority. But more importantly, it works on the basis of what the people are saying. Now, if there are political parties which put their ideological positions and party political interests above the interest of the people, that is not our problem. They will explain to the people why they disregard the will of the people, because a constitution must reflect the will of the people, not just the will of political parties. And that's why our constitution enjoins us to observe the rules of representative and participatory democracy.
Sure.
So this is going to be a big test in the parliament when we debate to check who is for the people and who is against the people.
Now, Tata Mutsecha, I mean, the reality is that for this bill to pass, it would require 2/3 majority of the House, which if we look at the National Assembly with 400 seats, it would require 267. And the ANC alone would not be able to achieve that, given the fact that it has 230 members. Do you believe, given all the work that you have done, that you will still be able to convince your political opponents to support this contentious bill?
We believe that the ANC is not alone. The ANC is with the people. And those who will not support the bill that was adopted by the ad hoc committee will be those that are against the people. And I don't know how anybody can justify being in the National Assembly representing positions, anti-people positions.
But obviously they can argue that those are positions that is on mandates from their respective parties. For instance, the argument, in fact, the dispute between the ANC and the EFF is over the issue of custodianship. Why is it so important for the ANC particularly to raise that issue, to be so steadfast on that very issue and not accede to the demand of the EFF? Won't you need to compromise going forward if you want that to pass?
You see, from the outset, the ANC said negotiations are about give and take. And that's why, as the chairperson, I allowed political parties on numerous occasions to hold bilaterals to try and find one another. But when we realized that there are areas where they don't find one another, we said the people shall be the final arbiter. We took these matters to the people. The people made inputs, for instance, which rejected outright the idea of state custodianship as envisaged by some other parties. Because, you know, it appears from the submissions on the state custodianship that people equate it to nationalization.
Sure.
But the ANC did not reject state custodianship because it appreciates the fact that when you expropriate, the expropriating authority must put the expropriated land or property into its hands pending the redistribution or restitution of that land to the people.
Sure.
And understanding of land state custodianship has been accepted, and it is in the bill.
Sure. Now, in your initial response, you actually took us through the road that this committee has traveled to get to this point over the past 2 years, but you still have not responded to that question, which I think lingers in the minds of most people, that says that why was it really necessary to go through all of this process when already the Constitution provides for expropriation of land without compensation, rather?
Let me address it again, but I know I'd address it. The Constitution implicitly provides for expropriation of land, but that is not explicit enough. And that's why we were given the mandate to make that which is implicit explicit. And that was the purpose of this ad hoc committee. But also, you'll know that as the Constitution stands now, you may expropriate, but you must compensate. And now our mandate was make sure that you make provision for expropriation without compensation, because, I mean, if 87% of the country is in the land of companies, private owners, individuals, and partly in the hands of the states. Does it mean that people who have been in struggle for more than 100 years for the land must now go and buy the land? If that is the case, what was the purpose of the struggle? Why shouldn't they just buy the land and forget about the struggle? So it's irrational. It's irrational to say people must be compensated when their land is expropriated.
Dr. Mutshekga, thank you very much for your time. That was Dr. Mathole Mutshekga, who chaired the ad hoc committee tasked with the amendment of Section 25 of the Constitution. As you can hear, it is not the end of the road. This matter is still going to be debated greatly in the National Assembly. And with that, that's all that we had for you today in politics.